Hey, I'm Chelsea of Friday Pattern Company, and this week on the YouTube we are going to be doing 2 Donny dress hacks. So Paige is going to do one and I'm going to do one, and we each kind of came up with our own ideas for fun twists on the top. We'll do kind of an overview of the steps, but if you want detailed instructions on how to sew the Donny shirt, we have a sew along video for that, so you can check that out. For my dress hack, I want to make kind of a shorter version that has a drop waist and then 2 rows of gathers. I think that that will be cute. I'm gonna make it from this kind of woven, it's like a little bit heavier than just a regular cotton, but it's definitely not like a heavyweight fabric. And I think it'll be kind of a cool twist on like a shirt, but a dress. I'm also gonna add a little bow to the pocket because I feel like that would be cute, and I kind of like elements of like a string in a pattern. And then for the sleeves, I want to lengthen them so that they hit about here and then kind of flare them out a little bit. So I'll cover how I'm gonna change the pattern piece for the sleeve, and then for the body I'm going to be lengthening the front and back and then creating those gathered tiers. So I will go over that as well. When you're lengthening the Donny top into a dress, it's very simple. The one thing you're going to want to make sure is to take the hip measurements against your hip measurements and make sure that that has enough ease for you, that it's going to be big enough to feel comfortable. And if you want to add more, you can either like grade out to another size, or on this back piece you can actually just add here, because this gets gathered in, and this is a really easy way to give yourself a little bit more ease if you want it. So you would just extend this back pattern piece out from the center back. If you extended this out, say a 1/2 inch, you would actually add an inch to the overall measurement of your Donny shirt. So here are the sleeve adjustments. I have my pattern piece cut out, and I'm going to tape it in place on a piece of scrap paper. The first step will be to square off the underarms. They're angled in right now, and I want to have them straight. So I use a ruler, and I'm lining it up to make sure it's squared off by using the base of the sleeve. I'm just referencing that on my grid ruler, and then I will square them off. Once you have those underarms squared off, you're gonna draw a horizontal line for your new sleeve hem, just whatever length you want to add. I added 5.5 inches below the original sleeve hem. Now we need a line down the center, so I squared it off from the notch at the top of the arm side, and I'm just going to cut this out. Now I'm slashing up that center line without slashing all the way through, so I just cut up close so that I'm able to spread these pieces, but they're not cut into 2. Now we're going to spread these pieces, so I'm going to add in 3 inches to give that like nice subtle flare. So I put a piece of scrap paper behind that opening, and then I'm going to tape it in place and then connect them at the hem. And then you can smooth this curve out if you want. I think it's subtle enough that you won't really notice it once it is sewn up. So I'm just going to leave it as is. So now I'm just adding in a few more tape pieces to make sure everything is super secure. And this is your new sleeve piece. So you can just cut this out and sew your sleeve as normal. Hey, future Chelsea here to tell you that a part of this that I thought I recorded did not get recorded, which is that I lengthened the front and back pieces by what ends up being 7 inches. So I squared off the hem of front and back, and then I just added from the bottom another 7 inches. Okay, so here's our progress update. What I have is essentially just a long Donny shirt with the adjusted sleeve that we went over, the sleeve pattern adjustments. I initially added 12 inches of length, and then I tried it on. I want this dress to hit mid-thigh finished, and I'm adding a gathered tier to the bottom, so I ended up trying it on and then trimming it down so that I trimmed it so it hits about here, which is kind of like, I guess, where my thumb starts if I hold my hands at my side, and then the tier is going to be about 9 inches long, so that'll get me to like above my knee. That was 5 inches shorter than what I had cut. I cut off 5 inches, so we would have only needed to add 7 inches. of length to the original Donny top. And then I also added this little bow to the pocket, and it's actually just a long string that I sewed pocket, and that is just because it has no function. So what's next is creating the tier pieces for the bottom. I am going to do some measurements to decide on a length, and then I'll add a seam allowance on the top and a hem allowance on the bottom of that height. And then to find the width, you can measure, depending on how full you want your gather to be, you could multiply it times 1.5 or times 2, or you could just add like 15 inches. I like to get an idea of how full I want it to be, and then check in with my fabric, the width of my fabric, and kind of compromise so that I'm not wasting any fabric. So I essentially, like, if 1.5 times the opening was like 50 inches, but I have like 54 inches for the width of my fabric, I'm just gonna use that because you won't be able to tell once it's gathered in, and that way we're reducing waste. Okay, so we're back and I have my tiers prepped. So I ended up, the tier size is the hem opening of the top times about 1.5, but it's a little bit off because I just went with the widths of the fabric I had. And then it is 9 inches. This is 9 inches tall. And I'm gonna start with the lower tier, and what I'm gonna do actually is hem it first because it'll be easier before it's sewn on. So I'm just gonna turn the bottom edge under 3/8 of an inch twice, and then I'm gonna edge stitch around. And then I will add gathering stitches to the top of the tier, the unhemmed side, and then we can attach that to the hem of our Donny top. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how I join the tier to the top. So I have the gathering stitches added, my tier is already hemmed. Right sides together, I'm going to pin the tier to the hem of the Donny top. Then I'm just going to gather it until it is the size of the hem opening of the top. So I just pull on the threads and kind of move the gathers around with my fingers until they're even. And then you want to add a bunch of pins in to hold everything in place, and then you can take this to your machine and sew it using your seam allowance, and then you'll press that seam and finish it. Okay, we're back, and I have attached the first gathered tier onto the bottom of my Donny shirt, and I have also tried it on and kind of placed where I want, there's a pin here, where I want the next tier to be sewn on. It's gonna be sewn onto the face of the dress. I'll show you. So we're working on this upper tier now. And so for me, that's 4 inches up. And what I'm gonna do, I have my other tier. I'm gonna hem the bottom the same way that I hemmed the bottom of this other tier, just turning it under 3/8 of an inch twice and edge stitching. For the top, I want to have that little like upper lip of the gather. So I'm gonna finish the top edge by just serging it. If you don't have a serger, you could zigzag stitch it. And then I'm gonna press it under 1 inch. Then I'm gonna add my gathering stitches on top of that folded edge. So I'll do my first row a 1/4 inch from that edge and then a 1/4 inch above that, so that when I sew it down onto my Donny top, I'll have that little upper, little petite gather up on top. So I said in that last segment that I want my gather to be sewn on 4 inches up above that other tier. So I'm gonna use some chalk to mark that going all the way around the hem so that I know where to pin my ruffle. Now I'm gonna grab that other tier that I had prepped, and I am going to pin it so that the right side is facing up. So it's actually wrong side of the tier to right side of the dress. So I'll pin the side of the tier with the gathering stitches on. I'm going to pin that, matching it up with my chalk line that I marked going around the hem, and then I'm going to gather that in until it's the same length as the dress. And then just like I did with the other one, I'll distribute the gathers with my fingers until they're even. add a bunch of pins, and then I will take it over to the sewing machine and sew it. I'm sewing kind of in between my gathering stitches. That's going to give me like that little upper gather is going to be about like 3/4, 5/8 of an inch. And so it gives it like a nice little zhuzh. Okay, here's the final dress. I cut a couple inches off this lower ruffle just to make these two ruffles sit on top of each other with like a smaller difference. I liked that look better. And I think that with this project, I was just like playing with proportion as I went and kind of just like trying it on and then adjusting and going from there. And yeah, I like how it turned out. I made a belt at the end because I think that it looks really cute belted. Yeah, it's pretty like flirty and adorable like this. I really love like the drop waist silhouette and I want that to be me, but I think it's just not like I feel like there's certain people who like that like oversized shirt thing looks really great on, and I'm not saying this looks bad, but I'm just saying it's not something that I think I would wear very much without the belt. I really like how the sleeves turned out. I think that this like longer bell style is kind of fun, and it's the dumbest detail, but like I really I like that stupid bow. Yeah, so I hope this was helpful, and yeah, next you're gonna see Paige's dress.
Hey, Paige here. So it's now my turn to show you my Donny dress hack, and mine is pretty straightforward, to be honest. I'm also doing a gathered skirt and making a kind of smock style of dress. So if you're like me and you like sort of oversized dresses, things that sort of go to the waist and then go poof, then you'll appreciate the hack that I'm about to show you. So before I get on to the steps, I thought I would talk you through the additional pieces that you will need. As Chelsea mentioned with her hack, I utilised the width of my fabric. So obviously fabrics come in all different widths. My fabric was 150 centimetres wide. So with my skirt panels, what I did is I just made the Donny as I usually would. I just cut off to where my natural waist sits. So this is going to be different for everyone. So what I would recommend, if you've made, say, the Donny shirt before you've gone into making the dress, perfect. Put your Donny shirt on, pop a pin where your the natural part of your waist falls into like the smallest part, take it off, and then measure from your underarm seam, so this, you know, like a seam underneath it, to that pin, and that will be the measurement that you need to take your Donny to in order to attach your skirt there. So it is personal preference where you're going to attach it depending on how short or long your torso is. I think mine was 5 inches down, maybe 4 inches as reference. But if you're coming to this video and you haven't made the Donny shirt yet, so you don't have that for reference, you can use the paper pattern pieces. You can hold up the front pattern piece to your body, and where the underarm goes, just hold that bit of paper next to you, and again you can measure down from that underarm to where your natural waist is, and then measure it with a ruler, and you've got the measurement of where you need to cut off the top, because it is a square kind of boxy shape. So you're only needing to amend the front A piece and the back D piece. So essentially your front piece is all in one, but your D piece is from the little gathered bit at the back of your back of the yoke down. So that's what makes up this part of the back and this part of the front. We're just taking it up to the waist measurement. Once you've done that, when you're cutting out your project, the rectangular pieces, I went for the full width of the fabric because I wanted my gathers to be full, like super full, and I had plenty of fabric. I had about 3.5 meters of fabric, so I had a lot to work with. Again, with your gathering tiers, so I use 150 wide by 150 wide, so it's 300 centimeters of fabric all together, and I made 2 rectangular pieces for the first tier. And then in terms of the height of it, I measured it up, so I literally held the fabric up to me and then wanted it to sit just below my bottom. Again, personal preference. Mine was roughly 12 inches in height, and obviously I had 2 of them, so 12 inches by 150 centimetres. And then that was the first tier. For the bottom tier, I did 8 inches high and then 4 panels of 150 wide. So it was a lot of gathering. And like Chelsea, I also made a belt. I made an inch belt. So what you'd need to do when you cut out your belt piece, I did it on the fold of the fabric, and I did it 2 inches and then added a seam allowance onto either side. So 2 inches plus a centimetre on each. So I'll double check and show you guys. About 7 centimetres, and then that would be folded right sides together and sewn down the long edge. And then optional extra, and I really love pockets in a dress. I know they're not for everyone, but I really wanted pockets in this dress because I wanted it to be swishy and I wanted to be able to put my hands in my pockets. And just being a mum, it's just easier to have pockets. And you can use any pocket pattern that you have on hand, but I actually use the Avenir jumpsuit pocket. I love the shape of it because it goes like thin like that and then it goes down, so it's like a nice deep pocket. And yeah, it was great. And then in terms of where I stitched it on the skirt panel, I'll obviously talk through that in a little bit more detail in a second, and I'll show you the sewing steps. Here are the steps in more detail. So this is a closer look at the top tier. So this is the tier that we need to attach the pockets to. The fabric I'm using has got this like lovely texture to it, but obviously I needed to iron out the selvage side and just trim that off. So I just gave it a quick iron and prepped it ready for sewing. And to attach the pocket, again, this is personal preference in terms of where your hands sit, but just from holding this rectangle up to my waist and putting my hands down, I knew that I wanted the pocket to start roughly about 5 centimetres down. So I used a fabric pen to do a little mark on the edge there, and that is the point where I'm going to sew my pockets from. So down from that point is the kind of notch that I've added to that pattern piece. You can see here that I actually ended up doing it a little bit further down. Big mistake because it ended up being the pockets were a little bit too low. So just always double check this. But then you want to right sides together, pin one of your pocket bags to that side seam. And then we're going to do a 1 centimetre stitch where that pocket is held on. Once one of your pocket bags is sewn down, you want to iron it so that the pocket bag and the seam allowance is facing outwards, and then you do a top stitch to stitch that seam allowance to the pocket bag, and then we will repeat that process with all sides of the skirts, so you'll end up doing 4 of those. Once your pocket bags are sewn on like this, you'll take your 2 top tier panels, your skirt panels, and you'll pop them right sides together, matching up the pocket bags and that little side seam. So what you do is lay them on top of each other right sides together, pin down that side seam at the top, all the way around the pocket bag, and then down. So when it comes to stitching, you're stitching this in one long stitch. So you'd obviously back tack at the start and the finish of the stitch, follow it all the way around the pocket, and then down. There's only a tiny bit at the bottom there, but depending on how long your skirt is, you would sew that entire side seam in one go. Once that's sewn, I finished the edge with my overlocker, and you will see it's come together really nicely, and now we can turn it out the right way and press it nice and flat. Once you have your top tier looped skirt piece, you're going to pop your gathering stitches at the top, and you're going to do 2 lines of gathering stitches ready to attach it to the Donny shirt. When I am sewing on large rectangular skirt pieces, so a lot of gathering is going to be involved, I like to take the piece that I'm attaching it to, match up the side seams, in this case on the Donny, and then put a centre back and centre front pin. That way I just quarter up the amount of gathering and make sure that it's even on all sides. So when you are attaching your skirt pieces, you would match the side seams to the side seams, and then the centre front to the centre back, and then gather in between those quarter points. It just makes the process of gathering a lot easier. I've sped this process up a little bit, but essentially right sides together, you're attaching the Donny shirt to the skirt top tier. So yeah, matching right sides together, matching up side seams, matching up the centre and back notches, and then you are taking your gathering stitches. Always use the bobbin side of the gathering stitch, just makes it a lot easier, and gather all of that lovely fabric until it is the right amount of width to fit onto your Donny shirt. Once that is gathered and it's the right length that it needs to be, you can then pin it to the Donny shirt, ready for sewing. And the seam allowance was the same throughout, I just did it as 1 centimetre. Repeat this all the way around on each quarter of the skirt tier, and then stitch all the way around in one big loop. You're then going to repeat the same process with the bottom tier. There's 4 panels of rectangle, so it does take a long time. Sew the side seams together first, then add your gathering stitches, and then you can attach them to the bottom of the top tier of the skirt. Once the bottom tier is attached, you'll just hem up the bottom of your skirt in your preferred hem method. I just do a rolling hem, usually it's about 1/2 centimetre and another 1/2 centimetre. And then you've got a finished dress. It is the twirliest and cutest dress, giving me all the Barbie vibes in this candy pink fabric, but it's super cute, and the waist belt was really easy to make, and it's definitely an optional extra. I think next time I would just bring up that waist ever so slightly higher, because it was a little bit on the low side, but for this make I'm not mad at it, I'm really pleased. The pockets are great as an addition, super functional. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed seeing it all come together. So that is it, guys. I hope you enjoyed seeing mine and Chelsea's Donny dress hacks. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to this channel, give this video a thumbs up, and let us know in the comments if you're going to be making either of these dress hacks for yourself. They're so easy to do and they're so much fun to make. I absolutely love the swishiness of this particular dress. I didn't realise it was going to be a swishy, but I'm absolutely loving it. So we do have the full Donny sew along video as well. If you are wanting to make the Donny for yourself and you want to watch along, we have that video, so it will be linked below, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!